Okay, I can see we've got around 20 people on the call so far, so I might just make a quick start in the interest of time, and I'm sure um, other people will be joining as we kind of move through just this opening introduction. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this session today. Can you all see the slides that I'm sharing? Yeah, okay, perfect. Thanks, Sheila. So yeah, my name is Freya Milford, and I'm a project officer on the CBIT GSB project here, working at the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Centre. And I'll be moderating this meeting today, which is on unpacking NDC tracking chapter of the BTR. And I'm also joined by my colleagues, Fernando, Suzanne, and Sheila. So, as you might be aware, today is the first session of a four webinar series, which will be unpacking the NDC tracking chapter of the biennial transparency reports. So, over the past few months, we've really seen many of the countries within Anglophone Africa start the work, with some of the countries completing the work on the first BTR submission under the Enhanced Transparency Framework. And we really recognize the hard work that countries have been doing in undertaking this reporting, and we all kind of know and greatly appreciate the efforts which you're making across your countries and the different institutions. So far within the network, around 9 out of the 22 countries that make up the Anglophone Africa network have submitted their first BTRs to the UNFCCC, which is obviously superb. But, however, to that vein, we also really understand that there are quite vast struggles and challenges that many of the countries within the networks are facing in tackling some of the different aspects of the BTR, which are subsequently leading to delays with finalising and submitting the BTR to the UNFCCC. In addition to that, this year, obviously, countries are all required to submit their third nationally determined contributions. And as such, there are really critical links between the NDC and the information which is captured within the BTR. So to this end, the CBIT GSB are undertaking this webinar series over the coming months specifically on Chapter 2 of the BTR, so the information necessary to track progress made in implementing and achieving the NDC, with the hopes that throughout this course, that the information set out will help to really unlock a lot of the barriers which have led to some of the delays in countries being able to complete this chapter, which then obviously leads to delays in the overall submission of the BTR, by kind of providing the knowledge and learning on really developing a robust NDC tracking chapter. So as I said, this webinar series will be carried out over 4 separate sessions over the next 4 months, as you can see on the slide here, with really the overall objective of the entire series is to provide an overview of the different aspects of the NDC chapters within the BTR, the NDC chapter within the BTR, and then also highlight the linkages between the BTR and the NDC in light of countries requiring to submit NDC 3.0 this year. So today's session is the first session of the 4, and as you can see here, it's going to be focusing on national circumstances and institutional arrangements as it relates to the NDC development and NDC tracking, and then also it's going to be covering a description, the information required to provide information on the description of a party's NDC and the overall target setting for the NDC. So here's just the agenda for today's session. And as I said, it's going to focus on the national circumstances and institutional arrangements. So Sheila will be presenting that information on the national circumstances and institutional arrangements, which will be followed by a Q&A session, after which my colleague Fernando, will be presenting on the description of a party's NDC and overall target setting. And this again is going to be followed by a Q&A for countries to ask any questions on the information presented. We'll then be holding a short quiz to kind of go over the information and the knowledge that we'll be kind of sharing through the slides today. As well as then carrying out a Mentimeter survey and obviously delivering the closing remarks for the webinar. So as as I said, we kind of have 2 dedicated question and answering sessions after each of the presentations. But obviously, if you have questions throughout the presentations, do not hesitate to make use of the chat function and kind of posting your questions in there. That way, when we get to these dedicated sessions, we can go back and go over them then. So yeah, just to make sure that we kind of stick within the time today, because obviously it is running for 2 hours. So just before I hand over to Sheila, I was just wondering if anyone had any questions on the agenda. No, I don't think so. So I'll hand over to Sheila, but first I thought we'll take a group photo. So if everyone could please turn on their cameras so we can get everyone's nice smiles for the platform. This is great. A few more would be lovely. Okay. Okay, thank you everyone. Okay, one more. 1 second, sorry. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'll hand over to Sheila now, and thank you again, everyone, for joining, and I'm really looking forward to this session today. Sheila, over to you.
Thank you so much. I will share my presentation shortly. I hope everyone can see my presentation.
Yeah, we can see it, Sheila.
So I would like to put my presentation in the slideshow so that you can see very well. So I hope it is so clear. Thank you so much, Freya, for that introduction. I would like once again to welcome Anglophone Africa Network to this session, the first series on NDC tracking, unpacking the BTR chapter of unpacking the NDC tracking chapter of the BTR. And thank you so much for showing a good representation from different countries. So the session is about NDC circumstances. The session is about national circumstances and institutional arrangement. And this is the first part of the subsection in the NDC tracking chapter. So before I can start, I thought I should also take you through the general institutional arrangements under ETF, enhanced transparency framework. It is very important for you to understand that institutional arrangements and national circumstances are not only required under the NDC chapter, but are also required even under the sections, other sections of the report. But most importantly, this session will be focusing on the NDC chapter 2, of the BTR, which is about information necessary to track progress made in implementing and achieving national determined contribution under Article 4 of the Paris Agreement. The first part of the subsection, like I had mentioned, requires that parties should describe national circumstances and institutional arrangements and other arrangements in place for tracking progress made in implementing and achieving NDC. And this whole subsection, the MPG provisions are from paragraph 59 to 63. I'm providing here on the right hand side a table of contents of a replica of what countries can ensure that they can consider when they are reporting. So some of the key elements are here. I will also be elaborating on them during this presentation. But of course, each party is required a shall for this section. The party are supposed to report on it. Where you see a shall, it's a must reporting. So they are supposed to provide information on how national circumstances affect the GHG emissions and removals over time. Then the institutional arrangements in place to track progress of NDCs, including those used to tracking internationally transferable mitigation outcomes, and of course, if applicable, but most importantly, also providing information on the legal, institutional, administrative, and procedural arrangements for domestic implementation of their NDC, monitoring, reporting, archiving of information, and stakeholder engagement related to the implementation and achievement of NDC. In this specific subsection, there are no provided flexibility provisions, so it requires that countries take note of that and they provide information for each of the MPG requirements. So to just unpack the first part, like I'd mentioned, paragraph 51 requires that you describe national circumstances, institutional arrangements, and other arrangements in place for tracking progress made in implementing and achieving NDC. And this information requires that parties provide information about the government structure, population profile, geographical profile, economic profile, climate profile, and sector details. Most of these, especially under sector detail, information should be well elaborated and updated based on the last reporting that you did for UNFCCC. So paragraph 60 also provides that you describe, provide information on how national circumstances affect the greenhouse gas emission and removals. And this section provides, parties can provide descriptive summaries on how parties' national circumstances impact on GHG emissions and removals over time. A good example of some of the impact that has been reported on so far in one of the BTR is an example from the Mauritius BTR. As you can see, they, after presenting the different parts of the sections, they created a paragraph to describe what is then the impact of the GHG emissions on the different subsectors, on the geographical, climate, and population. The other part is paragraph 61, which requires that each party shall provide information on institutional arrangements in place to track progress made in implementing and achieving its NDC under Article 4, including those used to track the items, the internationally transferred mitigation outcomes, if applicable, along with any changes in institutional arrangements since in the most recent biannual transparency reports, and of course, as appropriate if you have done something in that as a party. So part of the description of this, one of the tips is that parties can describe that institutional arrangements that have been set up to track progress in implementing and achieving their NDC. But of course, those institutions should take note that further BTR, for instance, when you are doing BTR2 and other subsequent reports, would also include any changes that have taken place on some of the institutional arrangements that were used to in the previous reporting. So BR2 reports can also bring some of the improvements, if any. Of course, there are also important considerations as a tip on reporting, where institutions should ensure sustainability of institutional arrangements so that not so that each reporting is building from the previous reporting, and also it also allows transition at national level from the current project-based arrangements to focus on periodic reporting that is required every 2 years, and also ensures continuity. But also institutional arrangements should should be designed in a way that there is evolution to bring out implementation of ETF requirements, allowing for continuous improvements, data collection, processing, compilation, and associated processes. And that was paragraph 61. So under paragraph 62, each party shall provide information on the legal, institutional arrangements in terms of the roles and responsibilities, if any, well illustrated, and then administrative and also procedural arrangements for domestic implementation in terms of how a country is intending to monitor, report, and this is in relation with periodic monitoring, also periodic reporting, and then archiving of the information, and who are the stakeholders that have been involved in relation to implementation of the NDC, but also achieving of the implementation in relation under as provided for under Article 4 of the Paris Agreement. So countries or parties are required to provide this information, and also if there are any other information related to the legal or change of any in the policies can also be reported at this stage. And then when it comes to paragraph 63, in terms of information required, reporting requires information to be referred in the previous paragraphs to ensure that there is consistency in reporting. So party may refer to the previous reporting in terms of the arrangement of the institutions that are available, but also most importantly, national circumstances. So for instance, reports like national communications and BTRs that now we have been using can be a good source of this kind of information. So this slide provides further guidance based on the MPGs provisions for establishment of the institutional arrangement. For instance, if parties do not have current institutional arrangements for their NDC reporting and implementation, they could also use the previous institutional arrangements for ETF that have been in existence. But in addition, it is very important that parties can ask some important questions like which organizations have been involved in implementation of their NDC or will be involved if some of the NDC ambitions have not yet been in implementation. Is there any need to establish a regulatory framework to support information collection or policy implementation? What types of arrangements could be established among the interested stakeholders? What type of information management system can be developed to support continuous reporting? These are some of the important questions that parties can ask, and then as they try to develop the institutional arrangements. But also, if there are no existing institutional arrangements, parties can consider to go through different phases as a progressive phase in terms of establishment of institutional arrangement. So you can do some scoping by clarifying which scope and objectives for the institutions, form a picture of the existing national elements by looking at how you are organized at the moment, and then what does it require in terms of the requirements under ETF. Then phase 2 can now go to identifying key stakeholders and institutions, analyzing their mandates, which ones can champion, establish high-level coordination. Then you can then map the proposed arrangement. Then phase 3 can also go through, you can consider developing systems, processes, and agreements to maintain data flows, and also MOUs, and maybe develop an implementation plan. Then also, if there is need, consider development of legal frameworks or regulatory frameworks if there is need. Then also you can put in place structures maybe that can enhance long-term succession and also reporting. And then phase 4 can also consider reviewing and improving to allow evolution, to allow new arrangements, to allow system and functionality and operationalization of some of the institutional arrangements. Of course, it would be very important overall to show how stakeholders come together in terms of periodic meetings within your organization, charts of the institutional arrangements, but most importantly, you can also demonstrate what efforts are being made to enhance sustainability, and then demonstrate institutional arrangements that are embedded or interact within the core national strategy development, but also that interact with other elements of enhanced transparency reporting, so that they do not exist in isolation of other processes like reporting on how you are progressing in implementation of the sustainable development goals. So some of the key elements that can support sustaining of the key institutional arrangements are mainstreaming the transparency framework within the existing systems, aligning within the departments, in the climate change agenda at the national level, but also top-down or bottom-up approach for allow sustainability and long-term existence of the institutional arrangement, but also allowing funding that can come in the long term, and then also providing some of the terms of reference to some of the institutional arrangements, and then using consultants, expert career progression, and also setting up some think tanks that can allow this progression and learning from the previous experiences. So for now, this is where my presentation stops, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Sheila. So I was wondering if anyone had any questions just relating to the information that Sheila has presented in these slides. And feel free to post them into the chat if you don't feel like speaking out loud. You can also obviously, have a think about some of the information that Sheila has presented, and we will be having another question and answer session after Fernando's presentation. Oh, there's a hand raised. Go ahead, Dr. Nyari. I hope I said that right. I think you're muted if you're speaking. I'm not sure. Can you unmute yourself?
Kindly unmute yourself. Dr. Nyari, we can see your hand. Kindly unmute yourself. Maybe we shall hear from him later.
Yeah, if you're having a problem with your microphone, feel free to put your question into. Oh no, here you go. I think.
Yes, now. Yeah, now she's there. Yeah, sorry.
No problem.
Sorry, just to know if you are going to share the slides which she has presented.
Yeah, we'll be sharing all the slides.
Okay, yes, and we also upload all the slides on our platform. Kindly visit our platform. I'll be sharing the link to the platform, but I will surely share the slides. Thank you.
We're also recording this session as well. So for colleagues who maybe haven't been able to make it today, they'll also be able to go back and access the chat on the YouTube as well. Okay, well, it doesn't look like at the moment there are any other questions. So I might be able to hand over oh, there's another one. Jamal?
Good evening. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Shira, thanks for the presentation. I don't know if I missed this out. What I want to put out is that what mechanisms exist for stakeholder engagement, where we shall involve maybe the private sector and maybe civil society participation. I don't know if I missed it out. Can you kindly clarify for me?
Yeah, thank you so much. What I missed to mention is that when it comes to institutional arrangements for ETF, there's no one fit for all. So depending on how you are organized in your country and how you have been involving climate change, stakeholders and other participants in the country, it would be very important that you would use the same existing kind of approaches to mainstream ETF arrangements within the already existing institutions. So engagement of private sector, there's no clear mechanism depending on how the country is organized, but usually bringing them on board, especially considering that most of the private sector might be data providers, and also building their capacity, making them to understand why you need them to be part of the institutional arrangement, considering what they bring on board as data providers is very important. That's one of the approaches or mechanism you can use by providing capacity, but bringing them on board, considering their role maybe as data providers, but they could be playing any other role as private sector. Thank you.
Any other questions just before we hand over onto the next presentation? I can't see any other hands raised at the moment, so I might kindly hand over to my colleague Fernando to present now the second presentation in today's session. Fernando, are you there? He might be having some problems with his audio. 1 second.
Hello, Fernando, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've just contacted him
Hello,
separately. So hopefully he isn't having connection problems. Fernando, are you there? Oh, I think I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Fernando.
Okay, thank you. Um,
Yeah, we're slightly ahead of schedule.
yeah, I'll Can you see my my presentation?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to present you NDC information from the Article 4 of the Paris Agreement perspective and how this is linked with the climate transparency. First of all, when we talk on the NDC, I think it's worth always recalling the two main goals from the mitigation perspective. The first is the temperature goal, which says that the Paris Agreement aims to hold temperature increase to well below 2 Celsius degree. The second goal is the mission goal, which is in the Article 4 and specifies first to reach global peaking of emissions as soon as possible and to undertake rapid reductions thereafter. Secondly, all parties of the Paris Agreement need to fulfill a series of steps. I present here 4 main steps. First is the step to prepare and communicate the NDC every 5 years. The second step is maintain these NDCs. The third will be to account for the NDCs, and the last one is pursue domestic measures, also with the aim of practically doing the mitigation or achieving the objectives of the NDCs. It's important to note that according to the Article 4 of the Paris Agreement, these 4 obligations apply to all parties, but least developed countries and small island developing states may develop their own strategies, plans, and actions reflecting their special circumstances. And this is how Article 4 comments on these elements. There are other sorry. There are other elements. I am not sure if you are looking at my 4th slide that is titled Other Relevant Elements in Article 4.
No, it's just the third
Because I
slide.
click it something wrong. But maybe if I resent it. Now it should be, I should resume in here.
I think it's on slide 3 again. It says NDC. Oh yeah, yeah, it's now on.
Okay.
It's now on slide
Okay.
4.
Okay. Yeah, because I pushed the wrong button and then it
No
started
problem.
everything again. Well, but as I told you, the Article 4 has several elements that are important for the NDC, and it's not important that when preparing the NDCs, countries may take into account also of represent the progression and reflect the highest possible ambition. Take into account that in the case of developing countries, they are encouraged to move towards absolute economic-wide emission reduction targets, but this is only an encouragement. We understand that countries at the beginning might identify more or less with a variety of targets. We'll check these targets later on. And also an important element that is part of the Paris Agreement, but sometimes is not considered well enough, is that all parties should strive to formulate and communicate long-term low greenhouse gas emission development strategies. So with this, we have covered more or less what are the contents of Article 4 of the Paris Agreement. What is important, it was created also the Section 4/CMAA.1, which gives further guidance in relation to mitigation. And I think that for those teams that are preparing the NDC right now, it is very important take into account the elements of the Section 4 of the CMA.1. I will go through some of the elements, but I think that there is a number of elements that they are covered in the two annexes, Annex A, Annex A, which goes to the information to facilitate clarity, transparency, and understanding of the NDC, and the second annex, which is the accounting for parties NDC. I will focus in this particular webinar more on the first annex, the annex on information to facilitate clarity, transparency, and understanding of the NDCs, which is called also the ICTU. Probably you are more familiar with this acronym of the ICTU. And basically, these ICTU are a series of information that countries must include in the NDC. So it's worth making like a checklist, and before sending your NDC 3.0, consider all the elements that are included into the ICTU and check that you have covered all of them. So with this, if the countries are complying with this ICTU, we are facilitating that the targets that the countries are presenting in the NDC are transparent and clear enough in order to implement the other elements of the enhanced transparency framework, such as the BTR. This ICTU includes a total of 7 elements. And the 7 elements are, the first is the quantifiable information on the reference point. The second is the timeframes of the periods of implementation. The third big element of the ICTU is the scope and coverage. The fourth is the planning processes. And in this regard, it's important what my colleague Sheila mentioned before on how countries are prepared to this planning process, and how they are applying these institutional arrangements in terms of having the elements that are needed to be included in the ICTU. The fifth element is the assumptions and methodological approaches, including those for estimating and accounting for GHG emission. The sixth is how the party consider that the NDC are fair and ambitious in the light of their own national circumstances. So some explanation on fairness and ambition of the NDC must also be part of the new NDC submission. And finally, a brief explanation on how is the particular NDC contributing to the objectives of the convention, as I started with my first slides. It's also important to take into consideration, it's not mandatory, but it's important also that countries in the first and the second round of the NDCs consider the element of conditionality. So some countries, I would say that the most of countries, took into account that they will show ambition to reduce the mitigation, but if they receive some sort of support, either financial, technical, cooperative in general, they conditionally improve even more the mitigation ambition. So this is an element that the countries must take into account and consider if it's suitable for them to include this conditionality. They can do it. No, there is nothing to stop them to establish a conditional and unconditional NDC. Now, if we move towards the targets included in the NDC, which is a part important of what I want to present you today, we find there are different families of targets used by countries in the current group of NDC. At least we can identify 5 categories. The first will be, and the most popular, will be the absolute target, which is a static emission value to achieve. Here I'm presenting some examples, but also other family of targets will be relative targets. And the most classical is the one when there is a business as usual that serves as a comparison in terms of what will be the target compared not in absolute terms, but in comparison with the counterfactual business as usual. A third type of target will be the trajectory targets that are a way of showing a dynamic target and which can move over time. No, there are some examples like the peaking target or achievement of a carbon neutrality or a trajectory target. A fourth type of target is what's called strategies, plans, and actions. And in this case, rather than having a top-down target, we are talking on specific measures, actions, or strategies that have more a bottom-up approach, allowing to produce the expected mitigation. And finally, a target that is less popular, but still can have several benefits, is the mitigation as a co-benefit. So in this case, the mitigations occur as a result from adaptation actions. No, so as part of the adaptation plans or the adaptation actions, there are some mitigation actions, and these mitigation actions have an effect in the reduction of CO2 emissions. The last part of my presentation, I will focus in how can the countries can improve the way they present their targets. And for doing this, there is a way to say that a target is a good target if the target complies with this acronym, SMART. SMART stands for S, or is specific. So there is a clear definition of the target. The M stands for measurable, and it means that the target can be accounted in terms of a value. The A stands for ambitious, and the idea is that the target is also showing the ambition of the country to have good mitigation. There is for relevant in terms that has an impact in the mitigation sector that is relevant for the country and thus have the potential to reduce a large amount of emissions. And T is time bound, which is always important. Identify when the target is to be complied and how can be tracked on time during the period before the time of the target. So here we have some examples of NDC targets. They refer in this slide to GHG emissions related target. For example, the commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in 2025 by 37% compared with 2005. And these elements that include this target at the gases, at the values, at the units, the time frame, if they're using a baseline. So a complete set of elements that define without a doubt what is the target, no? This is a similar example, but a non-GHG related target. Some countries decided to include this type of target also, but although they don't identify directly GHG emissions, in spite of that, it's possible to track because they are well defined. I would like to make you a practical example of how we can see if our target is an NDC smart target. And if we have this target one, achieving a share of 28% of renewable power by 2030, we can think that still is not a smart target, although it has some elements like a percentage, a value, it has is time bound, but there are other elements that are missing. For example, this 28% refers to a power generation, refers to a capacity, is only a power generation or capacity that is included in the country. What happens if the country imports or exports this part of power? Should be included or not included? So all these elements are part of a more smart target. Also important about the concept of renewability. In my country, I come from Chile, the large hydropower electricity projects cannot be counted as a renewable power technology. But all the biomass, irrespective of the size or the source of the biomass, is considered renewable. So this is something that every country defines what is renewable for them, and this is not a problem. The NDC and the Article 4 and the ICTU say that is fine, provided that the explanation of what is understood as a renewable technology is included into the NDC, or the law that is behind is cited into the NDC. Okay, this is one example. I will make a second example. Let's put this target to increase the public awareness of climate change effects and impacts on general health. This is more like a general statement, no? and here we can find a series of questions that are we can develop to provide a more solid target associated to this element that is, of course, can be important to the country, but we can we can define with all these questions that I have on my right hand side a better and smart target. Because if we don't put numbers, if we don't put time, if we are not explicit on how we are measuring, then our target is not solid enough. So for you as an exercise, you can check yourself if your previous NDC target and the one that you are building in this month can comply with this question to have a smart target. Here you can see, like in the second columns, a number of questions appear, and then you can use them as a filter to identify characteristic of either if you have a GAG related target or if you have a non-GAG related target that you still want to include into your NDC 3.0. And with this, I am finishing my presentation and going back to you, Freya.
Thanks so much for that, Fernando. That was really robust and full of lots of information. So does anyone have any questions relating to sort of the information that Fernando set out and has discussed? You can also maybe, if anyone has, if there's any representatives from countries who people are doing this or have had experience in kind of setting this initial target and maybe want to ask any questions, now would be a really good time for it, because we are actually quite ahead of schedule, so we've got a lot of time to discuss things if people want to. And of course, we'll be sharing the slides that Fernando has developed with you all after the meeting today. I don't see any hands, and obviously not going to pick on anyone, but it's we've got the time to chat through these things. So if anyone, even there's a question in the chat. Let me just read it out, and then would it be advisable to also include indicators in the NDC?
Yeah, thanks, Jean-Louis, for your question. I think that the probably when the BTR1 was prepared for countries, it was realized how important was to have good indicators. No, before that it was the NDC associated to targets, but not necessarily to indicators. So I think that if now you are in the position to know not only the target but also the indicator, I will think that it will be very advisable to have in advance the identification, at least of the indicators that you think are more relevant for the type of NDC you are proposing. No, in particular for the GHG emissions target, I think definitely it's good to be clear from the beginning that the type of indicators that will be used. The difference between the BTR process and NDC process is that the BTR process, the NDC process is not including a review of the content, but all the elements that I presented to you are more for your teams to have like a robust NDC that can make easier your life when you need to produce the BTR. Okay, and in this regard, if you add more elements like the indicators, I think that gives a good basis for the process of tracking the targets that you're presenting.
Thanks, Fernando. And also, yeah, just to note, the next session of this webinar, which will be held in March, is actually going to be covering the indicators. Oh, John
Yeah.
Luis just has a follow-up. His follow-up is, so would you develop the indicator of the target first? I'll let you take that again, Fernando.
But the question of if it's good to include indicators, this was the question, or?
There was a follow-up question from John Luis just saying, I think, what would you develop first then, the indicators or the target itself?
Yeah, definitely it's a process that goes hand in hand, because if you define a target without thinking in indicators, that can happen that we had the opportunity to see that the indicators were not robust enough to follow the target. Okay, so but without the target, how can you select indicators? No, so it's a process that goes hand in hand, and that's the I think the best way to approach it, thinking in targets, but not only thinking in target, but thinking in how to track these targets and which indicators are the most appropriate or the more the easier to find. Some countries included, for example, targets related with the presence of some technologies. But actually, only if you conduct surveys in the country, you will see the percentage of technology that is used or the level of use of some technologies at house level. So I think that the process of targets and the process of indicators should not be considered as two different elements.
Thanks, Fernando. There's just another question in the chat before there's another hand raised as well, so I'll just quickly ask the one that was put in the chat first, Bernard. So this was from Jarvis, and he asked, can you repeat on the difference between absolute relative and trajectory targets? And then he's also said, is it possible to use all targets?
Okay. Yeah, an absolute target refers to a specific value of emissions, irrespective of, for example, what was the baseline of the emissions. So in terms of assessing an absolute target is very easy, because you just compare, for example, the inventory at the year 2030, which was actually included as a target, an absolute target at, I don't know, number of kilotons of CO2 equivalent or methane into the inventory. But a relative target is a target that depends upon other elements. In particular, and the most common is depending on a baseline. So in this case, the type of tracking considers not only the emissions into the inventory, but also what would have been the emissions without the mitigation actions. So in this regard, a relative target is a more complicated target in order to do the tracking, because if you don't have the business as usual or the baseline, then you cannot assess the target. So in this regard, and that we had the opportunity also to see in our reviews of the BTR1 is that some countries went for this relative target using a business as usual, but they were not able to build a solid baseline. So that created a problem. No. The third one is the trajectory target. This one refers to, for example, complying with a condition. A condition can be carbon neutrality. A condition can be like a peaking the emissions, but this is not only a single year information. You need a number of years to see if you are peaking the emissions and the emissions on that particular year is the maximum and it's not a local situation. For example, because of the COVID pandemic, several countries reduced their emissions in the years of the pandemic. But it doesn't mean that they peak their emissions, because in the following years they started to grow again their emissions. So in the case of the trajectory targets, you need not only 1 year to make the assessment, but you need a number of years to see if the condition, in this case the peaking or the carbon neutrality, is happening or not.
Thanks, Fernando. Bernard, I know you have your hand raised. Would you like to?
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you, Fernando, for very insightful presentation. Just a quick one. Of course, I was involved in the BTR preparation for Kenya. I come from Kenya. And it's quite easy for, a mitigation target because it's mainly quantitative. My question is, can you have 2 targets in the NDC? And what will be the implication in terms of reporting those 2 targets, 2 or more targets in the NDC? One could be quantitative. For example, the one you're talking about, the emissions level, or another one could be a policy kind of target that can also be put in the NDC. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's possible to have more than 1 target. And actually the CTF tables allow for this situation that you can, in CTF table 1, identify the indicators for one type of target, usually a GHG emissions related target, but also in the CTF table 5, you can identify some measures, some policies. You can identify policies, action, measures, and strategies, and all of them should be, a target should be to comply with them, no? So as a target is also, you can say that your target is complying with a particular measure or a particular strategy. Some countries have, we have seen that have more than 1 target, for instance, a conditional and unconditional target. These are 2 different targets. As such, they are assessed in table 4 as table 4.1, table 4.2, depending on the number of targets they have. We have seen also that some countries are doing a target that is not a single number, but a range. They say, for instance, we will reduce between 10 and 12% our emissions. So this is not a specific one number, but is a range. So it's possible to have more than one target, and in practice, this is what we saw under BTR1.
Thanks, Fernando. Senyonga, I saw that you had your hand raised, but you've put it down. I'm not sure if you still have a question.
Yes, thank you, Frey and Fernanda, for moderating and presentation. I think my question, Fernanda has answered it because I wanted to relate the targets which, for example, for the Ugandan case, we are developing a long-term climate strategy which has sector-specific targets, and I wanted to reflect on that, on how we report it in line with the BTR. But Fernanda has really mentioned it, how that can be done.
Yeah, great. There was just one more question in the chat from Dr. Molo Siwa, and he said our target is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030. So do we need to explain how we are going to do that? Otherwise, is it not considered a smart target?
Yeah, this is a very good question. One thing is that the target is smart or not smart, but this is how it's defined, the target. The element Dr. Molosiwa is commenting is about the tracking of the target. How are countries track that they are complying with the target in time, and explain how they are going to do this. The NDC tracking chapter of the BTRs includes a number of elements. One of the elements is the NDC tracking, the NDC explanation of how is the targets of the NDC included, but there is also other section into the NDC tracking chapter, which is called policies, action, measures, and plans, that where countries can identify a number of actions that can go to reduce their emissions. Okay, so although it is not mandatory in the NDC to establish how the countries will comply, I think it's important that they have this in mind, because as a part of the BTR, they will have to make some analysis of how is progressing the mitigation in their countries in the period of the BTR, and what are the actions, measures that are causing the reduction of emissions, of mitigation emissions.
Senyonga, I can see your hands raised. Do you want to ask another question?
Yes, you want to ask another question, just for clarity on the components of the BTR. I'm trying to think through wide how far we can report on issues, this issues, socioeconomic issues, for example, issues concerning employment, gender issues, among others. I just want to understand whether under the BTR such we can go further to report on those socio-economic impacts of the adaptation and mitigation.
Sorry, Senyoga, you broke up a little bit just towards the end. I think I last heard you asking just how to report on economic and social issues, but was there anything you just said just after you finished saying that?
No, I just need clarity on that, how far the BTR can allow us to report on such components.
Yeah, thank you. The BTR is a document that the countries must comply with the number of elements, but all other elements are welcome to be included. And I don't see any problem in these elements that are not specifically identified are included into the BTR. As my colleague Freya had the opportunity to see that some countries included gender, although it was not a part of the official list of requirements. But I think chapters as the national circumstances are very broad and open in terms that countries can identify particular situations that are suffering. I had the opportunity to review one BTR of a country that is under civil war now, and they included this element as one of the elements that is causing them difficulties to comply with some of their targets and previous commitments with the Paris Agreement. I don't know if you, Freya, want to say something about gender?
Yeah, no, I think across the BTR as a whole, there are different areas where additional information on kind of gender or social issues can be kind of presented and discussed. I think, like Fernando said in the chapter 1, which is obviously discussing national circumstances, that's really kind of an area where a country can include as much information as they want or as they have on hand relating to their circumstances. So, that can include discussion, obviously, on kind of social circumstances. And I think especially for chapters such as, the adaptation, we are finding that a lot of countries are providing that more granular detail as it relates maybe to gender or as it relates to economic diversification. And that also kind of lends into the NDC tracking chapter as well, because like Fernando said, there's the area of the CTFs. I can't remember which one off the top of my head, I think 5 or 6, where you can list kind of the policies and measures that aren't just directly related to mitigation, but are kind of the gender or economic diversification or adaptation actions or plans or targets that are within the country that are going to have those mitigation co-benefits as well. So I think there's obviously at the moment it's not a direct requirement within the MPGs to be reporting it on this specific information, but including it within the different chapters definitely enhances the overall level of information and overall understanding of the country's circumstances. So I think, we're relevant, which can be kind of, as I said, in the introductory chapters or within adaptation, or even, within the NDC chapter itself. I definitely think that countries should be including information on this if they have it to hand. And it will also, it will serve the purpose in future reporting cycles as well, that it's, it's an area that you'll be able to touch again on. So I hope we answered your question there. And I don't see any other questions in the chat or any other hands raised at the moment. So I think, Sheila, if it's okay with you, we'll move on to the Menti quiz, just to kind of go over some of the stuff that we've gone over today. So I'll just share my slides so that you can all access the quiz. Just give me a second. One second. Can you all see my slides okay? Yeah, okay. Sheila, I think I'll hand over to you for the Menti quiz, so I'll leave this up. Ah, Sheila also has it as well. So I'll put in so you can scan the QR code that's on the screen at the moment to access the quiz. And I'll also send the code in the chat in case there's any issues.
Yes, so thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for the good questions that are allowing a lot of learning. But most importantly, like they elaborated about inclusion of specific things. That's why we have that subsection on the national circumstances, where I have seen some countries under a description of their population. That's where they really elaborate about their gender aspects, the other socio-economic, social aspects. But of course, the economic part is already provided for, but I have seen some countries also include the gender in that subsection. So it is very okay, you can include based on the national circumstances, because countries are organized differently. So most of the time, elements that influence their GHG emissions, the implementation of the NDC, they are different, and that chapter allows that kind of elaboration on how the GHG emissions are impacting on the whole process of implementation of the NDC, but most importantly on achieving their ambition. So I hope you are joining. The code for today is 45469455. I can put this code in the chat for easy access. Yeah, thank you. Freya has already put the code in the chat. So we can start the quiz for today. The quiz is about the elements we have learned today. So it's more of reflection on the elements we have learned. But I can see we have just only 6 players, and yet we are over 50 people. Kindly use the code. The code is 45469455. For those of you who don't know where to put the code, you can go to your to internet and log in www.menti.com, and then it will be requesting for the code to join a Menti. So you will use the code. The code is 45469455. Thank you so much for joining. I can see we are 13 players out of 50. Maybe I can wait a bit to see if we can make 20 to make the learning more interesting. So we are 15 players. We have only 6 questions. So I think I will start the first question. So the first question is, under the ETF, which statement is correct? We have a few minutes going down. Which statement is correct? Only developed countries report information on NDC tracking. All parties shall report on NDC tracking. Reporting information on NDC tracking is only voluntary for LDCs and small island developing states. So you will have to choose one. Which statement is correct? Thank you for voting. At least I'm happy that most of you already know that all NDC section is a mandatory section for all the parties. Thank you. The second question is ready. I can see the players have increased. Thank you for joining. So I will go to question 2 since we are already 20. I hope other people are joining too. So our second question is, in the context of BTR, which chapter is NDC tracking? Is it chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, or chapter 4? We have one person left to vote. Yeah, thank you for voting, all of you. Yeah, at least most of you know that it is chapter 2 of the BTR. Thank you so much. We are still learning, and I hope by the time we finish the series, we shall have understood most of these elements. So thank you for joining. I can see the players are increasing. The code is 45469455. We have now 22 players. I'll go to our third question. In the NDC tracking chapter, the section on national circumstances and institutional arrangement is a shall reporting provision according to MPG, according to MPGs. Is this false? Is this true or false? Thank you for voting. I can see everyone has voted. Yeah, thank you so much. At least one person is the one who is not very sure. I'm happy that all of you know that it is a shall for all the provision, for the national circumstance provision. So yes, thank you. I can see now we are 25 players. We shall go to our fourth question, which is the MPG paragraph 59 requires that parties describe national circumstances with the following information. You should tick all that apply. So we have government structure, population profile, geographical profile, economic profile, climate profile, and sector details. Kindly tick all that apply. So all these are required as part of what you should include under these national circumstances. According to paragraph 59, you should include government structure, population profile, geographical profile. That's why we see some countries include their maps of their geographical profile, of the geographical scope, and then economic profile. That's where you have an opportunity to show how your economy is somehow impacted with climate change, and then climate profile and sector details. Of course, all the sectors of the IPCC have to be included. So all these are a requirement under this subsection. Our second last question, question 5. Since we are 24, I will enter. What are the two main goals of Paris Agreement from a mitigation point of view? Click two options that apply. We have to reach a global temperature of well below 2 degrees Celsius, that is the temperature goal, and to undertake rapid action reductions thereafter, emission goal. So I can see 9 have been able to pass it, but the two options are that to reach the global goal of well below 2 degrees temperature, which is the temperature goal, and to undertake rapid reductions thereafter, which is the emission goal. So just to know that these two go together. And then our last question, we have 22 players. I hope the other two are also joining. The question is, to reduce GHG emissions in 2020 35 by 37% compared with 2025 emission. Is this an NDC target or an indicator? So you need to choose one. Thank you so much. At least most of you can relate that this is a target, not an indicator. And as you have heard from today's explanation, we need to set smart targets. And I think because this target is smart, that's why you are able to identify it as a target. So just let's see who was the winner for today's quiz. We had very many players. So hey, Jarvis was the winner. Congratulations, Jarvis. So I will start sharing and then hand over to Freya. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sheila. And thanks to all those who took part in the short quiz there. I'm just going to do one final Menti, which is just to get everyone's feedback today on today's session. So I'll just share my screen and then can everyone, oh, 1 second, sorry, it's just loading. Can everyone see the screen okay?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Perfect. Again, it's using a different code. So it's kind of same instructions apply as before. You can either scan the QR code that's on the screen, or you can go to www.menti.com and enter the code 83246589. Sheila, would you just be able to put the code into the chat, please? So we've got 9 of you, but obviously we'd like to get as much feedback as we possibly can from today's webinar, just to be able to, see what we've done well, see what we need to improve on to make, all the sessions in this series engaging and interactive. So I think there's 12 of you who have answered the questions so far. So question 1 is how satisfied you are with the webinar. So it's obviously nice to see that there's no people who've said dissatisfied or very dissatisfied, with the majority being very satisfied or satisfied. The next question is on the relevance of the webinar for the work that you're undertaking. So again, it would just be great to get as many answers on this as possible. We then have an open-ended question on what we can do to improve these types of webinars in the future. So a practical case study, a follow-up webinar arranged. So yeah, so we are going to be conducting a few more webinars within this series, which are going to kind of cover the different aspects of the NDC tracking chapter. So there are going to be 3 more sessions covering different ranges. On the practical case study, actually, in the next session, which is going to be on the setting the indicators, there's actually going to be countries presenting on their experience and providing their examples in setting the indicators for their targets. So that'll be covered. So yeah, the practical session using country examples. So yeah, that's going to be good. Yeah, so yeah, I think that's definitely going to be a part of the series going forward, is having kind of a bit more of an interaction and countries giving their examples. Occasional capacity to update on new developments and refresher. So these are all great. And of course, this Menti will stay open, so you can keep adding kind of feedback here. Not easy to attend while in the office. Yeah, I know it's always difficult when having these sessions online, but obviously we want to try and include as many people as possible in these sessions, which is why obviously the online format works so much in these cases. The time for questions was short. We can get time on the Menti. Yes, okay. I think you mean in the Menti for the time to answer the questions. So maybe that's something we can increase when we do others. Do you have any other comments you'd like to share? increase the timing. I think that might mean in relation to the Menti questionnaire that we just had. But no, it seems like overall platform to share lessons. So availability of a platform to share lessons and get assistance. So obviously we do have the climate transparency platform, which I'll send a link to in the chat, which I'm sure many of you are aware of and hopefully many of you are using, where there actually now is a dedicated section on the platform called Ask the Experts, where countries can ask questions relating whether it's to NDC or whether to other areas of the BTR or transparency, and dedicated experts can answer these questions. And also within this platform, there are a lot of knowledge sharing products, and there are a lot of key takeaways from some of the different work that we've been doing and the different areas of transparency. So I'll send in the link to the climate transparency platform in the chat. And yeah, I really recommend you all, if you haven't done so already, one, registering as a user on the platform, and that way you get notified when there are kind of new events that could be of interest into you, and also you're able to kind of go through in your own time the different areas of the platform and things that they can then offer. If possible, try, but we haven't had a comment on the virtual reality platform before, so that's definitely something we can consider as well. So I'll just stop sharing, and thank you all for your responses. And yeah, obviously, as I set out in the start of the presentation, this is going to be carried out in 3 additional sessions over the next few months. So the next session, which will, as I said, be on indicators, will be on the 13th of March, I think at a similar time as today. So we're really looking forward to the next session, and hopefully you can all join at that as well. Of course, if you have any questions relating to what we've discussed today, please send them through either on the platform on the dedicated Ask the Experts page, or over email, and we can provide any further answers relating to the information that we've discussed. And we'll be sharing obviously all the slides that were presented today, and hopefully when you go through them in your own time as well, it'll be helpful. And if you obviously have questions after you go through them, then we're here to help. But we look forward to seeing you at the next session, and thank you all again for your attendance today. And if there's any other closing remarks from yourself, Sheila, and if not, then we can close out.
Yes, I would like to thank everyone for joining this first webinar series, and we really appreciate your time, and we appreciate that there's a lot of enthusiasm in learning, and we don't take it for granted. Apologies where we have been able to make cross postings, because when we are booking your calendar, it's very difficult to be busy and hide your identities. Kindly inbox me if you are uncomfortable about sharing or booking your calendar. Otherwise, at the moment, that's the technology that we have, but we hope to improve in the future. So kindly inbox me if you are uncomfortable about the email cross-posting, so I can ensure that your email is not part of the group. I very much appreciate, and I would like to thank you. So I'll be sending another calendar invite for 13th March in the due course, but just stay tuned. We have a lot of webinars this year, more learning, especially on BTR reporting, so that we can fast track some of the processes. And of course, always reach out to me if you need any other in-country support. We also provide in-country support for such sessions. That's why we thought that we would break down the different sessions, but at in-country level and in-country support, we can provide really more detailed country-specific examples. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
maybe the last one is the photo we took. There were no many cameras and we didn't have so many faces. So if you don't mind, kindly switch on your cameras so that you can take another last photo that I can post and upload on the platform. Thank you. And of course, you can unmute and say bye to colleagues. Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot more cameras this time.
Yeah, bye. Greeting
Bye.
from Namibia.
Yeah, thank you for
You
joining.
sit close to my.
Bye-bye, Stella.
Bye.
From Gambia. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining.
Sheila, how are you?
I'm
Bye-bye.
fine. Thank you so much for joining. And I've taken a photo and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Sheila. Thank you.